It's the Tune Under Podcast Champions League party. It's Jack in Brisbane, and it's my Greek Victorian friend Dimi in Melbourne. Dimi, Newcastle United are in the Champions League. These are not words that I thought that I would be saying anytime within the next 3 or 4, even 5 years, to be honest, considering where we were compared to where we are now. But they sealed it this morning with a 0-0 against Leicester. How are you feeling? Has this sunk in for you yet? Have you been preparing for this? How do you feel?
Well, as you know, I'm a very confident person and sort of positive about my teams and how we're going to go. But I don't think it's sunk in properly that we're going to be playing Champions League football just yet. Probably it'll take a while to sink in. I mean, Newcastle posted all the Champions League gifs and the Champions League anthem's been going around. Joe Linton was getting excited singing it after the game. But I think probably not until the group stage where they draw the pots out and they see, and Newcastle's one of those balls that says, "Oh, we're in group whatever." It sinks in, saying, "Shit, we're back amongst the big boys." And yeah, it's been a very long 20 years, but yeah, just delighted that we finally secured it.
Thursday, August the 31st. That's the draw. So I'm sure we'll be setting the alarm for that whenever that's going to be. But yeah, you're right. It's like it doesn't it's been kind of like this concept that might have happened, and it's been a bit abstract for us because it's been so long since we've been there. Do you remember the last time we were in the Champions League? You're 28, I guess, something. You're a bit younger.
Thank you. I'm 31 actually, but
31? I thought you were younger than that.
yeah, clearly I've aged watching Newcastle over the years, but I do remember because so back then I didn't have the streaming services, but SBS back here used to show 1 or 2 games a week, and they'd have a highlight show. But back then I was very big on following on UEFA.com had like a stream where the ball would go around the pitch and you'd sort of follow the ball simulation wise how the game's going. And my vivid memory of the Champions League back then was the final game actually when I was in homeroom in grade 4 or grade 5, and my teacher was a Spurs fan, and he gave me the news during homeroom saying, "Oh, Newcastle have scored a last minute winner," and I was just absolutely delighted. I was like, "What the hell is this bloke talking about?" Newcastle final, and obviously no one was big on football back then or big on Champions League, so that was a distinct memory back then. And I do remember the Inter Milan game and the great results we had against Bayer Leverkusen. I think Scholler scored some goals as well back then, which was nice. Shearer scored a hat trick against Leverkusen, so I do remember. But it's going to be good to actually follow the games next season and actually have a team that hopefully we can compete.
Yeah, so the last time we were in the Champions League, this was my kind of peak Newcastle supporting years when I was just the right age. I just got my season ticket, and so I was quite lucky. I went to Milan, actually. I was one of the 12,000 or however many people were there when I was 16. So you had the 2 group stage scenario as well, which I think was UEFA trying to money spin a bit more. So we got through that group. We were the first team to ever get through after losing the first 3 group games in the first group, and then we got a new group with Barcelona and Inter Milan as well. Yeah. So, but that's what it's about. It's about those games against the big teams, and testing yourself at that stage. And it's just there's something so special about it, the Europa League's good. We had some good times there as well, but to put yourself against the best, the biggest and the best, and I think we'll cover this a bit later, but it's going to be a bit of a novelty, I think, still this time, because it's going to be the first time in so long, and so many of our fans won't remember last time. But we're gonna get used to it, Whether we'll get back in again next season, who knows? Because it's going to be very hard, and we'll talk about that as well. But it's really going to be the novelty factor, isn't it? Next season, a bit like how the cup final this season was a novelty, and being good again is actually a novelty. That's what it's going to be like next season in the Champions League, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, well, playing 2 games a week, playing on a Wednesday morning or Thursday morning over here against a massive European team. Those European nights at St James's Park are going to be rocking, and yeah, it's hard to fathom, to be honest, that we've come so far in probably less than 18 months. We're bottom of the table, winning 1 game in the first 4 or 5 months of the season, all of a sudden we're third in the Premier League and playing Champions League football. So it's a bit surreal, to be fair, but I'm glad we're here, and let's enjoy this moment.
Yeah, so we are going to talk about the Leicester game at some point in this podcast because it's supposed to be a review, but it's all about the Champions League. So we will get to the game and cover some of the key points off. But how did you actually manage to get through the day today? Because it was one of those days where it's finished at 7:00, and then I had to, obviously been watching that, I had to get straight out the door, drop my girl at daycare, get straight to work, and then I was back to back until lunchtime. So I couldn't. I was just like, I was all over the place. I couldn't immerse myself in the content until I got home later. But how did you go today with work?
Yeah, so my morning was not too bad at work, so I did have a chance to immerse myself in the content. I was getting around everything, the Insta stories, the Sky Sports videos, all the interviews. I couldn't wipe the smile off my face, to be honest. It's a moment I think that as Newcastle fans we really have to enjoy, and there's going to be hopefully a lot more bigger moments, hopefully winning things and hopefully bigger results for us going forward. But on the journey that we're going and the journey we want to go as a club, I think we really have to enjoy these moments, and just to see the happiness of obviously the fans, one, and then you see Eddie Howe, you see Graham Jones pumping their fists at the crowd, you see Joe Linton singing the Champions League anthem. All that stuff is just sensational content. I can't wait for the match cam to come out, and I think it's going to be, it's a magical moment. I don't know how the players are going to get themselves up for the game on the weekend, but you just got to immerse yourself in it, because obviously if we make it again, which obviously we're hoping we will be a regular Champions League player, we're not going to probably have the same feelings as we have now. It's going to be sort of not going to take it for granted, but it's not going to be the same euphoric celebration. So I think we have to really immerse ourselves in this. And lucky for us, there's only one more game to sort of get through, and then we've got the whole off season to sort of enjoy getting ready for the Champions League.
And nobody cares about the Chelsea game now, but
nah, exactly right.
I'm pleased you've talked about that, because I was listening to a podcast on, I think it was the Athletic or something the other day, and I think it was Daniel Storey, the journalist, who was saying in football often the journey is actually the best part of it. You don't know at the time because you're always striving for something and you're always aiming for a target, but there's no guarantees. There's no guarantees that we're going to get back. We probably will, because we've got the resources and we've got the ownership and the structure and the manager to do that, but there's still no guarantees. It's still really, really hard. So like you said, we have to really enjoy these moments, enjoy this season. It was getting stressful for a little while there, like worrying about Liverpool winning every week. So I'm going to talk later as well about what it means that we've actually managed to hold them off, because I think that's a huge learning curve, and it's such a amazing achievement to do that, to withstand that pressure. But yeah, you're right. The journey has been so good, and it's been so unexpected to an extent as well. So I think we really do have to enjoy it and just for what it is, for this spectacular achievement, which is probably been the best season, or certainly one of the best seasons that I can remember in my time supporting. I was a little bit young for the entertainers to remember properly and understand the significance. And I think even in Bobby's time, you still thought you were going to get back there. You didn't think it was going to fall off a cliff the way it did so quickly. So that's what I mean. There's no guarantees. So let's enjoy it for the absolute pleasure and joy that it's brought us this season. It's been so, so good. So Champions League qualification, when I was doing the finances podcast, and I was looking into that, the Champions League is worth on average about £86 million a season for English clubs. And the Europa League is worth about 19 million. So you can see there's a massive more financial advantage to being in the Champions League. Plus, there's obviously the broadcasting, the sponsorship money, and the brand exposure, and the opportunity to get more sponsorship in. But what do you think qualifying for the Champions League right now means for the club? Because they're ahead of schedule from where they were supposed to be. They will freely admit that.
It's massive. I think, first of all, in terms of revenue generation, in terms of what sponsorship we can potentially attract, I think it's huge. Obviously, all the major sponsors, they want to be shown on the big events, and on the big stage. And obviously Europa League is a decent stage, but the Champions League is the pinnacle of probably European football and arguably the best league, club, or national in the world. So it is the pinnacle. So the fact that we're in that league and we're going to be exposed to the minimum 6 group games is massive, and we can obviously garnish that and get a good sponsorship. But I think not just that. I think in terms of the eyeballs that we're going to get and the exposure we're going to get worldwide. Obviously, Newcastle, we love the club. We immerse ourselves in all the content. But I think a lot of people who aren't sort of following Newcastle or familiar with Newcastle are going to start to learn all about Newcastle's history as well and about our story, not just the fact that we were taken over by the Saudis 18 months ago. So I think that's also good, and that builds our fan base, builds our exposure, and all that generates income and generates revenue, not only in the UK but worldwide. So I think there's a long list of benefits, and I think it's a never ending list, to be honest. The longer we be in the Champions League, the better it's going to be for us.
You can just imagine the images of war flags at St James's Park in the first group game, or imagine we've got a group game against Real Madrid or something, and like everyone in the world, every football fan in the world watching it, and you've got that being beamed out. It's got to be attractive for potential signings as well. People looking at that thinking, I'm interested in that. I'll have a piece of that. It's just going to be an amazing experience, and it will be a novelty to an extent because it's been so long and because it's such an exciting thing. But there's no way that Eddie Howe's going to be seeing it like that. He's probably already planning for the. He doesn't know who we're going to play yet, but he'll already probably be watching teams who possibly might be able to play, might be drawn against, so we can see what. And it's going to be such a learning curve for him as well. He's never managed in Europe before, but what he's achieved in his career so far has been absolutely astonishing. And he said, actually, he was asked about the scale of this achievement, and he still said what he did with Bournemouth was a bigger achievement, when he saved them from relegation when they were at the points deduction. So he's got his feet on the ground, and he's going to stay like that. And you just hope he does enjoy it though as well. You hope he can enjoy these moments because he's so fixed on his work and on improving and getting better. And talking about that, we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but how hard do you think it's going to be to qualify again for it next season and to maintain the performance levels that we've managed to put in this season?
Well, it's obviously going to be difficult. I mean, we've only lost 3 games all season. That's hard to do in a 38-game season. It's very hard to only lose 2 or 3 games in a year. I mean, probably not even Manchester City or the eventual champions will end up losing more games than that. So that's obviously going to be tough. But I think what we can rely upon is Eddie Howe, Dan Ashworth, the whole staff. We know that there's going to be the recruiting's going to be good. We know that the coaching is excellent. So whoever we get in the club over the off season and whoever's going to be in the squad next season, I think we can trust that they're going to be coached well. And I mean, of course, the other teams are going to improve. You'd think Liverpool will improve. Spurs, who knows, they're a basket case, but Chelsea might improve. Manchester United will probably get better again. And there's going to be other challenges as well. So we have to keep evolving. And I think the advantage we're going to have now is the fact that we're going to be in the Champions League. I think we're going to have a laundry list of players who want to come and play for us. And we'll probably have the pick of the bunch that, all right, this club's going somewhere. Let's see who we can get in. And I think the fact we've got Eddie and Dan and the team there, we're going to pick the right people and the right players will come from that. So I think, yeah, it'll be difficult, but I'm not too concerned about other teams around us.
I think the experience that we've had this season as well, where we've pretty much been in and around that top part from the first part of the season. And I touched on it earlier. We've demonstrated such a strong character and ability to cope with pressure, because I wasn't coping with the pressure of Liverpool. I was absolutely panicking about them every week. I wasn't panicking, but I was just, because I didn't expect us to qualify for the Champions League. I didn't think we would, up to a point, and I wouldn't have been angry or disappointed. I would have been a bit disappointed if we'd have lost it from where we were, but when we got ourselves into that position where it was so close, it was just an obsession. It was all I could think about, even though Europa League would have been good. So for our club to have the experience now of being in that battle and of seeing Liverpool win 7 games on the spin and still managing to keep them at, away, and to beat the teams that we've managed to beat at home as well. And we're going to talk a little bit more about key moments in the campaign. But I think that ability to cope with that pressure is going to stand us in good stead. And it's a bit like what's happened with Arsenal this season, is where they were winning the league for so long, and then they've crumbled a bit. They couldn't cope with the pressure, or maybe they just couldn't cope with the idea that Man City were just relentlessly winning every week, and then they've dropped off. But we didn't do that, We've still managed to keep them at arm's length, and we've still managed to qualify. So I think that's going to be a really important experience for us to be able to draw upon for next season as well. Do you think that there's any danger that, there can never be a bad thing about qualifying for the Champions League, but do you think there's any danger it maybe has come a bit too soon? And what do you think might be the kind of pitfalls, because Eddie Howe in his post-match interview was talking about challenges. There's going to be challenges next season. What do you think might be the kind of issues that'll come up by the fact that we've achieved to this extent this quickly?
But the 2 issues that I can see potentially being an issue, a problem, would be Champions League football is obviously the pinnacle. They're going to be very difficult games that we're going to be playing on a Wednesday night or a Tuesday night over there. So we're not going to be playing a midweek game against a Premier League team who might not be up to it. We're going to be playing high intensity football, probably 2 games a week for the majority of the season, hopefully. So the experience of playing game after game after game at high intensity and high quality, we've done it at times. We've done it really most of the season, but there has been times where 3 or 4 games in a week 3 or 4 games over a couple of weeks has been a bit too much for us, and we have seen the levels drop. The Aston Villa game, I think, was the 3rd away game in a short space of time, and we sort of not crumbled, but couldn't match the intensity game in, game out. I think that's going to be a challenge for us, and that's where we'll probably have to talk about the squad depth and getting more quality into the team. But the other potential issue I can see is the expectation. Obviously everyone talks about expectation from Newcastle fans, and we haven't had much expectation for a while because we've been dog shit for a long time. But I think the fact that we've had such a good season this season and made a cup final, going to finish in the top 4, only lost 3 games, I think it's hard to expect that sort of level of performance again. If we do it, fantastic. So we're going to have to condition ourselves. We may go on a 3-game losing streak, or we may go 5 or 6 games without a win, and there may be a few more blips than we're used to, but it's all part of a season. Every team goes through some sort of blip, and it's going to be how the pressure is managed externally more so. I trust Eddie Howe to manage it internally, but I just hope that the faithful don't jump too early if we start slow, or if there's a few tough results in Europe and sort of carries on to the Premier League. So I think there could be two potential issues for us.
Yeah, because if you look at it, say we finish on 71 points or 73 points, there's gonna be this sort of expectation that we match that or we better that. And like you've just articulated, that's really, really hard. We've managed it this season with amazing coaching and some players overperforming probably, but all of the stats and the underlying numbers suggest that we deserve to be there. So this is no fluke. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter really what Liverpool or Spurs or Chelsea had done this season. The points that we've got would be good enough for top 4 most seasons anyway. There's always a big club or 2 that are struggling a bit or that have dropped off. But it is going to be the expectation. We're going to go into games next season that we're going to be expected to win comfortably.
Yeah.
And we're even going to go into games say against other clubs around us where we're expected to get a result. Instead of the result being a bonus like it's been this season. So I'm thinking of Spurs away, for example. We'll be expected to go there and win that next season, and that's not easy. They're going to have a new manager. So there's a worry, I suppose, that if we do have a few bad results, which will happen because it's football and it happens, that there's going to be a lot of disappointment and people saying we're not as good. And you can just picture people starting to say things like, we need to get a Champions League experienced manager, or we need to overhaul the squad and we need to get rid of all the players who've got us to this stage.
Yeah, they're not good enough. They're not good enough, or Eddie's out of his depth. We're overachieved. Yeah, you can see all exactly right. You can see all the headlines already.
And I think that's what Eddie is talking about when he talks about challenges, as well as the playing 2 games or 3 games in a week and having that relentless football and less training time. I think the club is going to have a massive job to handle expectations now and to manage expectations. They've kind of said that from the beginning. So, and I don't know whether there's going to be a bit of maybe a clamour from some supporters as well to just go out and buy world superstars because we're in the Champions League now and because we might be able to attract them. So we could go and sign, we'll just use Scott McTominay as an example because he's one who's already been derided by lots of Newcastle fans. But if Eddie sees a place in the squad for him, or Kieran Tierney as well, British players who have been solid but are not sort of outstanding world stars, you can just see that people would get disappointed if we bought players like that, even if they've been identified to perform a role in the squad. So I think this is going to be the big challenge. It's not going to be a problem for me because I just trust what Eddie does. Like, I trust him with my life now. He can do whatever he wants. But I think that's going to be something that is going to be. I think we'll be talking about that a lot on the podcast next season. And I'm going to have to try and not get frustrated at times by people's reaction, but we're looking way ahead here anyway. We're getting carried away, and there is no bad side to qualifying for the Champions League. It's an amazing achievement, and even if we drop out next season, we'll have had that exposure and we've had that opportunity to get that money in and to start bridging that gap to the financial gap to the other big clubs. Can you pinpoint, because I was listening back to the podcast that me, you and Bobby did after the Aston Villa win. So that was I think that was 13 games in. And I asked you and Bobby to talk to me about why we would qualify for the Champions League. So even at that stage, we were thinking about it. You said we were going to do it at that stage, but you're super positive all the time anyway.
Yes.
Can you pinpoint a moment in this season when you thought there was a realistic prospect of us qualifying for the Champions League? And can you pinpoint a moment when you thought we were going to qualify for the Champions League?
When I thought there was a realistic opportunity, I think was probably the last game before the World Cup break. I think we beat Chelsea 1-0. And it was sort of a massive game, the last game before a 6-week break. And Chelsea at that stage weren't the basket case or expected to be the basket case that they turned out to be. And they were going to be obviously a challenger for top 4, a team that was in the Champions League, expected to be challenging for top 4. So I think the way we played that night and sort of the vibe around the club at that point, I think we won 4 or 5 in a row heading into the World Cup. I thought, look, it's a long season, but we've shown when we've beaten Spurs in the first half of the season, we've beaten Chelsea at home. They're 2 big teams. We drew with City. The results showed that we were matching it with the top teams. And obviously I went back to January and I said, look, from January 2022 onwards, our form was basically of a top 6 team, not a top 4 team, but a top 6 team. So we were right in and amongst that upper echelon of the Premier League. So that was probably that game probably was the moment I thought we're in that bracket, whether we'll finish top 4 or not. Obviously, I'm confident. I obviously said yes, and Nostra Dimi strikes again. But the actual the game that I thought it was definitely going to happen, and where a Monty to make it was the Manchester United game. I think at St James's Park when we beat them 2-0, and 2-0 probably flooded Man United too. We battered them, and it was a wonderful performance. It was probably just a couple of weeks after or a month after the cup final for us to respond and give it to Man United at home was for me a sign that this team's mature enough. I mean, we're still young in terms of this competition, in terms of getting up to the top of the Premier League, but we're mature enough to do this. And I thought that was the game that showed me.
So you've known for at least 2 months that we were going to qualify for the Champions League.
I told you after the Villa game.
Yeah. Well, for me, those Spurs games, both Spurs games have been massive this season, because the away one was we said at the time it was a real statement win, because that was, I think it was 3 games in a week, and it was Everton, Manchester United and Spurs. I think it was Man United first, actually. We drew that, beat Everton and then beat Spurs. And I remember being on that podcast and saying, this is a real good team, and there's nothing fluky or lucky about this. This is really good, and the underlying numbers back up what we're doing here. So I think at that stage, I thought we would be we'd be in the Europe conversation after that game, because we played so well and we got such a good result. And then the Spurs home game, looking back at that now we've qualified, that's the one where you're winning 5-0 after 21 minutes. It's absolutely against a club that could have gone level with us on points that day as well. It is beyond any sensibleness, that game. It's just ridiculous to hammer a team, that a potential challenger like that. So I think that was the game when I started thinking we're actually going to do this, because by that point we'd already beaten Man United as well, and we're on a good run. And then I think the moment that really, really cemented it for me was Callum Wilson's goal against Brighton, the 3rd goal, just less than a week ago, because we knew we were going to win that game, and all we were going to have to do was beat Leicester in the last game, or as it turns out, we only had to draw with Leicester. So I think that was the one for me where I thought, this is it. I don't want to think that, because I didn't want to be disappointed, but that was really it. Like, that was, you look at those home games against Man United, Spurs and Brighton, don't you? And they were the ones that, when we did the podcast with Craig about the run-in, they were the ones we pinpointed and said, if we can get 7 points from these games, or if we can win them all, I think we're going to be with a good chance. And that's the way it's happened, hasn't it, in the end? Yeah,
exactly right. And they're the proverbial 6-pointers when you play teams in and around you who you're trying to get a jump on. If you beat them, it is a proverbial 6-pointer. So yeah, they were all quality performances. I mean, in every game, obviously the Spurs game was ridiculous. I don't think I'll ever see a game like that again. 5-0 after 20 minutes. But the Spurs game, the Brighton game, and the Man United game, we dominated every inch of those matches, and probably at no point in any of those games did we think that we were going to get beaten, and it was a comfortable result in every game. So the fact that we were that far ahead in every game at home against those teams who were competing for our positions, I think that just proved that we are good enough, and we're not just a fluky team who's got on a run. We're a team that's the 3rd best in England at the moment.
Yeah, and we could have beaten Man U 5 as well. You know, we absolutely destroyed them at home as well.
Yep.
Right, let's have we're going to talk about Eddie Howe for a moment. Let's just have a little look at the job he's done. Everyone knows about this, but it's worth just having a look again and seeing. When Eddie joined Newcastle, we were 19th in the table with 5 points from 11 games. And here we are. We were 19th in the relegation zone, 5 points adrift of Watford, who was in 17th at that stage. And here we are now. We've qualified for the Champions League. We're going to finish 4th at a minimum. We've spent money. We've spent £250 million since the takeover. But you have to spend that money properly. Look at what Chelsea have done. They've spent money as well, and they're going to finish in the bottom half of the table. We've got the right recruitment of players. We've got the right staff in place. I don't think there's enough admiration in my heart or in my brain for Eddie Howe for what he's done. He gets the club. He understands the area. He knows, he's so calm. He's so measured. He's so good at keeping everyone's feet on the ground. He surrounds himself with the right people. His transfer policy has been to get the right characters in as well. So he knows the value of that. He works hard, but anybody can work hard. It's what he does. It's his quality as a coach that has managed to get this team that was just over a year ago languishing in the relegation zone to qualifying for the Champions League. Just have a word for Eddie Howe and the job he's done, Dimi, because it's just beyond incredible, isn't it?
it's beyond belief, to be honest. It's beyond anyone's wildest expectations or dreams when he joined us. I mean, there was slight hesitation, I think, from a lot of people when he joined, because there was that fiasco with Emery and how he was supposed to be the choice and then he wasn't. So Eddie was sort of the second choice in some people's eyes. And obviously his recent performances at Bournemouth weren't great. They got relegated and he was out of a job. So there was obviously a little bit of hesitation from everybody. But I mean, it's very hard to put into words what he's done. I think the first thing that has shocked me and just I have to give him credit for is the coaching job that he's actually done on the pitch with the players that we've got and with the players that we've brought in. I mean, he's made Joe Linton into probably one of the best midfielders, not even in England, in Europe. He's turned Fabian Schär from not getting a game into a regular starter who's almost borderline in team of the season talk. He's turned Dan Burn into a 6'7" reliable left back. He's turned Jacob Murphy into a workhorse winger who all of a sudden knows how to score goals. And Miguel Almiron is almost the leading scorer this year until Wilson went crazy. There's just countless stories up and down the squad that every single player that he has metaphorically touched, maybe physically touched as well, but metaphorically touched, have improved. So it's just a testament to him and his coaching ability and his staff's coaching ability. I mean, to think of the point where the players were probably at when he came in, they'd just been, in inverted commas, coached by Steve Bruce for over 2.5 years. And who knows what the hell he was doing on the training ground. But to go from that to what Eddie has done is, yeah, there's no two greater opposites. So, yeah, full credit to Eddie. And, yeah, his coaching for me has been the astounding thing. Obviously, we spent money. Well, we needed to. We didn't spend money for 10 years. So I'll push back to anyone to say, oh, we've just spent money since the takeover. We didn't spend anything for 10 years. So we needed that investment. And it's not just the investment. It's the players that we already had that have become key parts of the squad. And they're probably the reason why we've qualified in the end.
I don't know if you saw the video with Shea Given and Nick Pope that the club put out, where it was on YouTube. But Nick Pope had a GoPro camera on, and Shea Given was doing like a masterclass thing with him. And even the goalkeepers were doing what looked like just the highest quality training session. You don't see these things very often, like behind closed doors, what happens. And we know that Eddie Howe has got a sort of a catalogue of training sessions that he spent time when he was off work and putting in digital form and you know, he's just so clever. He's so clever and smart in what he does. And you're right, when he arrived, the players couldn't even run, never mind play football properly. And now he's turned them into this relentless pressing machine. So having better players around has obviously helped raise the levels of the players that were already there. But nobody, like, I'm Sean Longstaff's biggest fan. Nobody saw him turning into this player he is, you know?
No.
Joe Willock's showing signs of becoming a real elite class player as well. And we've just qualified for the Champions League with Dan Burn playing at left back for the whole season. You know, like you just can't overestimate the job he's done. And I'm so proud that he's here. That is our manager. And the best thing is he seems to feel like that way as well. So, and I love that he never looks too far ahead. He doesn't want to talk about transfers. The first thing he said when he came in was, I just want to coach the players I've got here now. Let's focus on that. But maybe now we might start talking a bit more about, you know, because thoughts and attention is going to turn to the transfer window. We'll be doing plenty of content about that as well, because the squad's going to have to improve. And the thought of what he might be able to do with even better players is quite frankly frightening for other clubs in the Premier League.
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to be so good. Right, let's have a little bit of a look at the last thing we're going to do in the Champions League before we do talk about the Leicester game is look at the potential opponents. This is the projected Champions League pots from a few days ago. So I don't know, some of this might be a little bit out of date or might have changed. But we will be in pot 4 because of the coefficient. We haven't been in for such a long time. So that means we're going to get 3 potentially very difficult opponents. who do you want to get in the Champions League? Looking at these pots here, do you want to go for the real big boys and get some of these big knights, or do you want to have a group with more chance of his qualifying and progressing in it? What's your thoughts about that?
Well, for nostalgic sake, I'd love to see Feyenoord and Inter Milan in our group. That would be nice, just to reminisce how we did it back in the day. And I wouldn't mind playing Rangers as well. I think that would be a nice little trip up to Glasgow. So I think, look, obviously the teams in the Champions League are quality, but what we've got to remember, probably the best team in Europe is not going to be in our group. That's Manchester City. So all the English teams can't be in our group, which is a massive bonus. And everyone else can be had, I think, with Eddie Howe. I mean, at home, St James's Park, there's not going to be a team in Europe who are going to want to come and play us. So I think, look, to be fair, we'll play anyone we get, but for nostalgic sake, I'd like to see Feyenoord and Milan in our group, or Inter Milan in our group.
That'd be really nice. Yeah, Juventus might be in pot 2, but then again they might get
they just got
point, haven't they?
Yeah. So yeah, they got docked initially. I think 15, then that came off, and now 10 points has been docked, so they've dropped to 7th. So it might not be Juve in the Champions League, but even so, any Italian team, I think, can be beaten. I mean, Napoli had a sensational season; they're champions, but I don't think the City is as strong as other top European leagues. So I think they could be teams that we can compete quite well against.
I would love, just for the pure prestige, I would just love to have Real Madrid or Bayern Munich. Barcelona, obviously, we've played them before. I'd love to just see it against Bayern Munich, just to see what happens. Just to have that night at St James's. And the same goes for Real Madrid. They're in different pots, so we could potentially get them both.
Yeah,
and then
ideal.
Rangers would obviously be good as well from pot 3, or maybe like Lazio, or you don't really want to be going to Ukraine, to be honest, or Croatia's a bit far away as well. So let's have a nice let's have some nice closer games. But it doesn't really matter, does it? Like I was saying, I think this is going to be a novelty to an extent this time around, but we are going to eventually be in here every season, hopefully. So it's not going to matter. We're going to hopefully play all of the teams at some point or another. But just the thought of Newcastle playing against Real Madrid at St James's Park, oh my God. It's absolutely, it's absolutely amazing. It is, yeah, it is. I think I'll be taking that day off work if that happens. All right. So, is there anything else you want to say about the Champions League? This is your opportunity to say anything else about this momentous occasion before we do go and talk about the Leicester game.
I just want to say I just can't wait for that first game and for the place to line up and the Champions League song to belt out at St James's Park. That's going to be a magical moment. And I think it doesn't matter who we draw for our first home game in the Champions League. I'm going to put on us to win 2 or 3-0. We're going to be absolutely with our pants on fire, just running around that pitch like for our lives. It's going to be an amazing, I think, experience for the fans, and any club who's going to come to St James's Park is going to be shit and brick. So that first game for me, I think, if you want a Dimi prediction, I think it's going to be a 2 or 3-0 win. Doesn't matter who we play. I don't care if it's Bayern Munich, Real Madrid. I don't give a shit. We are going to absolutely dominate that first game.
Classic Dimi. I love that. I love it. All right, so we're now going to have a very, very quick break, and we'll get back to talk about the game, which actually did confirm us in the Champions League. We'll be back in a minute. So it was 19th place Leicester came to town. They had lost 5 and drawn 2 of their previous Premier League away games, previous 7 Premier League away games. They had been absolutely pathetic against Liverpool in the last game, and against Fulham, they got beat 5-3. They'd been in absolute shambles defensively all season. They tried to gamble and sacked Rodgers and brought in Dean Smith, which doesn't really seem to have done the trick for them. But their tactics in this game were quite, I don't know if they were brave, because like it could have backfired quite badly what they did. But basically, they played an 8-2 formation where they basically. And it's funny because we did this against Man City when Rafa was there, and we also did it when Steve Bruce was here at home to Man City. And it's so demoralizing and depressing to see your team play that way. But what was your thoughts on their team selection and their tactics because it became apparent straight away what was going on?
Well, I knew it was going to be a difficult game, and in terms of they're just going to put 10 men behind the ball. Big Harry Suter, the Scott Aussie, is going to be sitting at the center defense with Johnny Evans and that other curly haired bloke, Colaccini Light, whoever he is. And it was going to be tough because they were going to sit so deep. There's not going to be much space. And I think our one weakness, which we'll talk about in future pods, probably is going to be teams who sit that deep. Do we have someone who make that killer pass or take that shot or do something a bit different to break? And obviously we didn't create that much, but it was going to be a tough night, I thought, and it did give me some solace that they didn't want to attack, because I thought there's no way we're going to concede a goal, because they were barely going over the halfway line. I mean, Vardy was just running around in circles, didn't know what to do, and when they've got arguably their two best players on the bench, Maddison and Barnes, or their two best attacking players, it just shows you they had no intent whatsoever to score a goal, and they were praying for dear life for a 0-0.
Yeah, it was like an attack v defense drill, wasn't it? They were just they weren't showing any kind of attacking intent whatsoever. They were kicking it towards Vardy, and then there was just no one there. So we obviously knew that we had to draw. But as the game went on, I was just thinking, I'm so glad we don't have to win this game, because I thought we were going to score. We kept hitting the post again. But my overriding emotion was, I'm pleased we don't have to win this, because there's no way they're going to score. They can't even get out their own half. But it's hard to play that way as well. It's hard for defenses to play that way, like so compact and constantly under pressure. And if you have a look at the stats just from the first half, we had 83% possession and completed 347 passes to their 76. And we had 14 shots to 0, but we'd only had 2 on target. So the expected goals for half-time was only 1 as well. So that shows that the quality of chances was not good that we were creating. To be honest, big Harry Suter was in the way of everything. He was getting in the way of absolutely everything. And we were finding it quite tricky. The last 5 minutes of the half, we hit the post a couple of times, Miggy and Wilson as well. But we might as well just touch on the difficulties we've had against teams that do this now, because Palace did this and got a draw. Bournemouth have done it twice and got a draw. Actually, Palace have done it twice and got 2 draws. Leeds have done it. Leeds did it once at St James's Park, and they got a draw as well. So in this game, we didn't have Joe Linton. He went off in the warm-up. He wasn't fit. I don't think Longstaff, well, he played 90, but he probably wasn't fit. He was only there because we were desperate. So the creative burden, obviously Willock wasn't there, so the creative burden was kind of on Bruno and on Isaac and Miggy to try and do something out wide as well. But what do you think we need to do? Like, do you think this is going to happen to us next season? Do you think bigger clubs will see this blueprint, who've got better counter-attacking players, and they'll come and try and do this and soak up the pressure? Or do you think we just need to buy players who are capable of breaking these kind of teams down?
Yeah, I think we need to buy players who are capable of breaking the teams down. I think we don't have, for me, an old school number 10. That's someone who drops just in behind the striker, receives the ball facing the defense and can make a pass. We don't really have that. And we circulate the ball wide. And when teams are sitting deep, we circulate wide. We come back to the middle. We go back wide. We may put a cross in. We might not. It's sort of a little bit robotic and not, when there's no space there, it's a bit hard to penetrate with those balls. And people forget as well, Bruno is no number 10. He's a sensational player, but he's not someone who makes killer passes. That's not what he's made a living off. He's made a living off being probably more box to box and more even defensive than box to box. So we're asking him to do a lot in terms of defense splitting passes. I mean, he had a couple this morning that were just a little bit off, but I think we definitely do need to find someone who can play in those pockets and can find those little spaces where sort of like De Bruyne would or Messi would back in the day for Barca.
Yeah, because Man City come up against this, and they've got ways of breaking these kind of teams down. I think if we'd have scored one goal, the floodgates might have opened because their heads would have dropped, and that brick wall would have collapsed. But yeah, it's going to be a challenge for us how we do this, because it probably is going to happen more. And I think we are going to need better players. And there's often a lot of talk when you're linked with players about where are they going to get into the first 11, but you're going to need different kinds of players in different kinds of games. So it's a squad. You need to use the whole squad. So we could have James Maddison, for example, and we might not necessarily use him in some of the away games where we need a bit more defensive structure and strength. But he'd be ideal in a game like this where we need a creative spark and somebody who's going to make something happen. I still think, though, that Leicester did get lucky because we hit the post 3 times. We got into the second half and Bruno managed to hit the post from about 30. It was about 5 centimeters out. I don't know what happened with that one from the corner. But what were you thinking at that stage? You were just thinking it's not going to be our day in front of goal.
Yeah, well, when the corner came in, I thought it was a direct corner that went straight into the post. I didn't even realise Bruno missed it until they showed the replay. But yeah, it's almost impossible to miss from where he did. I don't know how the ball didn't go in from that position. But again, it was just one of those games where we just kept hitting the post and didn't look like we were going to score. I think we made the decision probably more subconsciously than consciously, probably around about 75 minutes. I think, okay, the ball's not going to go in, but let's just be a little bit more compact. The crowd might be getting a bit antsy. Let's not leave ourselves open for a sucker punch. I think we started to not settle for the draw, but not be as forceful with our attacking play. And I think it probably was the right move considering how deep Leicester were playing and the fact that they had no intent to attack anyway. I mean, they did end up having that one chance, but they had no intent to attack. And the fact we could just pass the ball, I think for the last 5 minutes, we were passing the ball around the back a lot, just literally waiting for Leicester to attack us. So I think it ended up being the right move because you're going to have some of those days where the ball's just not going to go in. And that was the day for us today. But luckily, like you said, we only needed a draw and we weren't chasing that goal.
No, and they did have a couple of dangerous players on towards the end. So Barnes and Maddison both came on, and Daka was on as well. So they started. There was a period of time around 75 minutes or 80 minutes where they actually had the ball for a couple of minutes, and it was like, "Whoa, what's going on here?"
Yeah.
and then they did get that chance. Oh my god, that was horrible. That was awful. Like, you just 89th minute. You just when you saw that go in the shot, you just thought this is going in here, and it's going to be one of the worst moments of my life because it's going to be devastating.
Yeah.
But Nick Pope, who hadn't had anything to do all game, I don't even think he touched the ball. He might have had to catch one cross all game. He was there in the right place at the right time. It's a save that you would expect him to make because it wasn't too far to either side of him, but he still had to have the strength to keep it out. How good a save was that in the context of that game? And what quality does that show that Nick Pope has got as a goalkeeper to be able to concentrate for that long to pull that save off?
It shows who the great keepers are from the good or the average keepers. It's any goalkeeper who has 30, 40 shots against them a game is gonna have chances to make saves. That's sort of dime a dozen. It's sort of like training practice. But the ones who have absolutely zero to do, he barely probably touched the ball. I think Leicester went into our box in the first half. Maybe they touched the ball once in the first half in our box. So he barely had the ball all game. So for him to keep his concentration, not sort of lose sight of the ball, because the cross did come in from quite wide, and it was a snapshot that sort of he may have been blindsided if he wasn't concentrating. It was a decent snapshot, and yeah, I mean my heart sank. I as soon as the cross came in, it's sort of my heart stopped. I'm thinking, what's happened here? But thank goodness that Shah as well. I think you have to give him a mention because he was awake to the loose ball and he reacted to it first and got rid of it. Because big Scott come Aussie Harry was there waiting for the tap, and it would have been just a disaster for Aussie Harry to knock the ball in. But thank goodness for Shah, and thank goodness that Popey was awake.
Yeah, and we did the defence were just sort of passing it around, like you said, for the last few minutes, and Leicester weren't really pressing much. So I think like they knew that if a point was quite valuable for them, because
Yeah,
it meant that if they win the last game at home to West Ham, then they'll stay up if Everton only draw. I think that's it.
correct.
Because of goal difference. So
Yeah,
Everton have got Bournemouth at home, so they should win that. They'll be favourites, but Leicester have still given themselves a bit of a chance there to get out of it. I'm so glad that we're not in that position. That's a horrible position to be in, but yeah, that moment was that had potential to ruin a lot of people's days and weeks. I think, because I did not want to go into that Chelsea game with anything riding on it. Even though I think we'll probably beat them anyway. I think there's more chance of us beating them now while we're relaxed and there's no pressure on it for us. But yeah, it was that. And when that moment when the final whistle went, it's just a release, isn't it? Because
yeah,
it's been in your thoughts for so long. It's been a long, hard season for the players. It's been a long, hard season for the fans as well. Especially fans like us, like we get up in the middle of the night and early, early mornings, and we do sacrifice to watch the games. It's you used to do it when pre takeover as well, every game, didn't you? So I think for fans like you who've done this for so long, it's just that moment is such a special moment, isn't it? When you realize that this is it. We've actually done this and we've achieved what many people would have thought was impossible.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 20, 25 years of watching rubbish and waking up 2, 3 in the morning, losing 3-0, 4-0, getting relegated twice, getting teased, being a Newcastle fan. Everyone here in Australia follows the so-called big clubs, not little old Newcastle. But yeah, it was relief, and I think the players had the same feeling, because I think as the game sort of drew towards the 90 minutes and towards the 95th minute in the end, I think everyone was just desperate for that final whistle just to release the pressure valve. And thank goodness it did. And thank goodness, like you said, we don't have to go and worry about that last game.
Yeah. Do you think that the game was an anticlimax in the end, or do you just think it doesn't matter? No one cares.
I think at the end of the day, no one's going to give a shit, to be honest. We've had a lot of great moments and a lot of great nights at St. James's Park. We've scored a lot of goals this season. We've had fantastic football to watch. I don't think we can begrudge a 0-0 draw if it gets us into the Champions League. I mean, the end result is all that matters. So the fact that we've qualified is the main aim, and whether we scored 4 today or 3 or 0, the fact that we got a point and that's all we needed is all that matters.
I think the Brighton game was the one, really. Like, I think that was the one where we knew, and especially then when Villa went and got a point at Liverpool, that was such an important result for us. So never let me say another bad thing about Aston Villa ever again. But yeah, the Brighton one, I think, was the one. Like I said, that Callum Wilson goal where you knew that we'd won that game, and you knew that we only had to, at that stage, we only had to beat Leicester, and then obviously we only had to draw them in the end. So there was no chance that I don't think we were going to lose that game, despite that very scary moment at the end.
Yeah.
And here, just for the XG wankers, because this is the XG wanker edition of the pod, and no one's going to criticize us for this. It was 2.28 to us and 0.08 to Leicester, which shows you their strategy and attacking intent. But yeah, the XG probably has pretty much evened itself out into actually what we have scored this season. I'd be interested to get that information. I'll have to message Edit Kev on Twitter and see if he's got that, because he's been saying all season, like we have been, that things are going to even out. It's going to be fine, and that's what the numbers say. You can't argue with numbers, can you?
You cannot. Numbers. Well, I'm an accountant, as you know, and numbers don't lie. They're factual. So. Yeah, we were saying it for a long time that when we went through that run where we were drawing every game and scoring one goal, if that, or not scoring, everyone was shitting themselves saying, "Oh, we've got no attacking talent, we've got no threat, we don't score enough." But numbers don't lie, and eventually the tables have turned as we predicted.
And there we go. And here is the league table. Like I said, the numbers don't lie. We cannot be caught by Liverpool. We're on 70 points. We can finish the season on 73 points, which would be more than any team since Sir Bobby Robson's team in 2001-02, who only got 71. So Eddie Howe could beat Bobby's best ever points tally, and I think he would only be behind the Entertainers, I think, who got 78 points in the 38 game season. Yeah, we're gonna be back to be doing season reviews and everything, so we'll get more in depth into this, but that's just a remarkable story of the season, isn't it? Really, Dimi, that league table.
It's staggering. I think the thing that obviously 70 points is amazing, and 19 wins out of 37 games is amazing, but just look at that goal difference. I mean, plus 35. I mean, how many years were we minus 25, minus 20, just getting battered week in, week out? And the fact that we're plus 35, the third best goal difference, shows how well we've done this season, and probably shows, I mean, although Man United will probably jump us when they beat Chelsea later this week, I think over the course of the season, we've been, I think, markedly better than them. And the goal difference sort of over 37, 38 games doesn't lie. So that for me is a fantastic achievement.
Absolutely. And like I said, we will be doing season reviews and goal of the season and moment of the season and everything coming up. So I think we'll leave it there. It's been a long day. It was a 5 a.m. kickoff. So I think it's time to go to bed happy with the Champions League theme playing around our heads. Thanks, Dimi. I'll see you soon. And we'll be back to talk about the Chelsea game that absolutely no one cares about anymore later this week.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, Dimi. See ya.
See ya.